Here we have the control arms. Installing the steering rack ends up having interference issues with the lower control arms, especially at compression. So they just squeak by the control arms with where I have the rack installed, with the boots laying basically on the lower control arms. But at full extension, with each of the inner tie rod end fully extended from the rack, and if you were to go through any type of scenario where the suspension compresses, it's going to hit the control arm. The steering rack is going to hit the control arm. I saw someone that did a set, I believe it was a set of 201 lower control arms. They did a really nice job cutting in. I think it was the same. I think it was 3/8. This is 3/8 steel plate. And then they cut it in, but I actually wanted to keep the integrity of this, at least this lower piece of steel on the control arm. So I just put the steel on the bottom and welded it in, and then cut out what I needed for clearance. So the end result is going to be the same. And then I got good penetration on the welds, and I'm just going to go through and soften the edges. But this is going to be plenty strong enough. This is probably going to be strong enough than the boxed in steel tubing that they use for these control arms. But I would factor, I went ahead and bought brand new control arms because I didn't want to go through this modification. And then since these are the later, because it's a 400E, these are the later ball joints to clear the brakes, and I didn't want to have an issue after I spent all this effort and time to modify these to have a lower ball joint start squeaking or something, and I'd have to do this all over again. So started with brand new ones. And I don't know how much longer these will be available from Mercedes-Benz. I think there was a time there where you couldn't get them, but these, one of them actually we had to get from Germany. So I figured I'd start with new ones, but I'm going to get these rust-proofed and black painted, and then ready to install. So I'd also like to say that, for anybody concerned with the integrity of these arms, most of the load is placed between the ball joint and this front mount, with the spring being in the middle. So that's essentially what is carrying most of the load of the vehicle. And then the rear mount really is to stabilize this arm, like during braking. So during braking, it would want to obviously apply pressure on that control arm. And this is not weakened in any way. So the amount of pressure it would take between this ball joint and this rear mount to collapse it, that 3/8 steel plate welded in place is more than strong enough. So again, most of the load, and this is not like the most substantial control arm. I mean, this is hollow. It is fairly thick steel, but most of the load is between this mount and this ball joint. With really this angle just being stabilized by the shape of the arm and that rear mount. So plenty strong enough, won't be any issues whatsoever. Arms are installed, and here you can see why we need to clearance the control arm. This is at full compression. So, and I've got the steering all the way out, so the end of the inner tie rod end, the shaft coming out of the steering rack, will hit the control arm. So it has to be clearanced in some way. So that's how I did it.